Hey everyone, this is Ryan Eckert with Peak Endurance Solutions, and welcome to episode 1 of the VO2 Max podcast. Alright everyone, so seeing as this is episode 1 of this podcast series that I'm creating, I wanted to take a little bit of time and go over my background in terms of my education, certifications, and experience as both an athlete and as a coach. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ryan Eckert, and I'm the founder, owner, and head coach of Peak Endurance Solutions, which I founded back in 2017. As far as my educational background and certifications go, I have my bachelor's degree as well as my master's degree in exercise science from Arizona State University. Got my bachelor's degree in 2015 and then quickly went on and got my master's degree a couple years later in 2017. I'm a certified strength and conditioning specialist through the National Strength and Conditioning Association, which is probably one of the biggest organizations out there in terms of providing credentials and certifications for fitness professionals, alongside the American College of Sports Medicine. So I'm certified as a strength and conditioning specialist, like I mentioned, as well as a personal trainer through the National Strength and Conditioning Association. I'm also a USA Triathlon certified coach, as well as a certified swim coach through the American Swim Coaches Association, which is basically just the equivalent of USA Triathlon's organization body. That's kind of the main organization body that provides swimming certifications to coaches out there. And then as far as my experience as an athlete goes, I grew up playing probably the opposite of an endurance sport. I grew up playing baseball and hockey as well. I played hockey and baseball starting from age 5 all the way up through to middle school. And then after middle school, I moved to Tucson, Arizona. At the time, the high school I was going to didn't have a hockey team out there, so I played exclusively baseball at that point, just focused all my efforts on baseball. Played all 4 years of high school. And then once I went to Arizona State, I played for 1 year on the club team out there. And it's kind of around that time that I started becoming less and less interested in baseball, just because of everything that was going on at the time with school and then my part-time work. At that time I was getting my undergrad, and I was also working part-time as a personal trainer. And this was probably a really good combination at the time, because I tend to be a little bit more of an introverted person, a little bit more on the shyer side. Interacting with people isn't necessarily my natural instinct. And so I was really in my element while I was at school, getting to sit down in the classroom, read, write, learn everything that there was about the exercise science piece. But then I got to hone my abilities to work with people through personal training throughout undergrad. And it took me a few years, but after a while I started to really enjoy not only the learning aspect in the classroom, but also the applied aspect in the real world through working with people. And that was great, because that kind of set me up for where I am today. I ended up getting my bachelor's degree, like I said, in 2015. I worked as a personal trainer all 4 years of undergrad. And then I went to get my master's degree right after that. It took me 2 years to get my master's degree. And I worked as a personal trainer for the first year or so of my master's degree before I started Peak Endurance Solutions in 2017. Right before I graduated, actually, I started Peak Endurance Solutions. So I have quite a bit of experience in terms of my education and my background. I have 6 years worth of education of exercise science between my bachelor's degree and master's degree. And then I have at this point almost 10 years of experience working with people through personal training as well as coaching. So I consider myself to have a pretty decent base of experience and education, and it was during the past 10 years when I was getting my education and working with people that I developed two passions. One was for working with people to achieve, whether it's health goals, fitness goals, performance goals, whatever it is. I really love the process of working with people, and that's why I started Peak Endurance Solutions, was because I particularly loved working with endurance athletes. Once I got into endurance sport myself, I found that I really loved the endurance side of things, and so I decided, instead of working with people one-on-one through personal training, I wanted to do coaching with endurance athletes, and so that's what led to Peak Endurance Solutions. But number two, my second passion is learning, and particularly the process of learning, reading, digesting research, applying it, writing about it. I just love the concept of taking recent research and applying it to not only myself as an athlete in the training that I do, but also to my coaching and working with other athletes. It's an integral part of coaching as a whole. Coaching is both an art and a science, and I particularly love the science piece of it. And then as far as my experience as an athlete goes, so like I said, grew up playing baseball and hockey, and I started getting into endurance sport kind of in 2013, 2014. I did some running races at the time, and this was after I had stopped playing baseball. I had done some local running races, started to enjoy that a little bit, trained for like 5Ks and 10Ks and half marathons. Nothing too crazy yet, but just a little bit of kind of unstructured training as a runner. And then it was in late 2014 that I started, that I heard about triathlon. So I had a friend who at the time did some duathlon and triathlon races. And I thought that would be kind of fun. At the time I was riding my bike to and from campus and work. So I was already running and I was cycling. So I figured I could at the very least do a duathlon, which is just run, bike, run. But I was only one sport away from doing a triathlon, which is swim, bike, run. And so I started swimming in 2015, and then I think it was July of 2015, I did my first sprint distance triathlon. A few months later, I did an Olympic distance, and then a few months after that, I did my first half Ironman, which was 70.3 Arizona back in 2015. And ever since then, I've been pretty hooked. I've kind of fallen in love with it. Back 5-10 years ago, I never thought I would have been an endurance athlete. I didn't really like running growing up. I remember when I was playing baseball, running a mile or two seemed incredibly daunting, and now it's crazy to think that I run 3, 4, 5 miles for an easy recovery run some of the times. So it's been a pretty dramatic shift over the past 5 years or so since I've been an endurance athlete. But during that time, I've competed in sprint distance races all the way up through Ironman plus distance races. Sprint distance, Olympic distances, half Ironmans, and then I've done one really long distance race, which was Project Dirkman, which is a little bit longer than an Ironman. It's an extreme triathlon, and so I've participated in running races still since then, duathlons. So I have a pretty wide range of experience in terms of being an athlete myself and participating in a variety of different types of races and distances of races. So that's a little bit about me, my background, my credentials, my experience as an athlete. Let's hop into some of the reasons why I wanted to start a podcast. So like I said, I have a love for science and sharing it with other athletes and coaches. And so I'm hoping that I can use this podcast as a platform to share that love. So I do a lot of writing. I do a lot of reading of science on my own. And I do a lot of writing about that science that I read. And I find that not quite as many people are as eager or interested in reading, but podcasts seem to be pretty big. And so it's easy for a lot of people to just listen to podcasts while they're commuting to work, while they're on the trainer at home, while they're outside riding their bike, while they're going on a run. So I figured rather than just trying to focus all my efforts on sharing my passion of science through writing, why not do it through a podcast, which might be a little bit more digestible to more athletes and coaches out there. So I love science. I love sharing it with others. And more importantly, there tends to be a lot of misinformation out there, whether it's from uninformed athletes or coaches who don't necessarily have the educational background or the science background to keep up with research that's out there in the field. It's a skill, and it's a learned skill. I mean, it took me 6 years of getting a bachelor's degree and a master's degree to get to the point where I feel comfortable enough reading and interpreting research and putting it into the context of the greater body of research that's out there, and knowing how to interpret it and dumb it down enough so that I can share it with other athletes, share it with other coaches who might not have that same educational background. And then it's a whole nother piece of the equation to know how to take that science and decipher it and apply it to training and to coaching. It's definitely a skill, and it's a learned skill. And there's a lot of athletes out there, and and there are even some coaches out there. Not to go and bash on other coaches, there are lots of really good coaches out there, but there are some coaches out there that do spread misinformation just because they might not have the science background to be able to know and interpret research. And a lot of people do get their information from social media, from websites or blogs that they follow. And more often than not, some of that information, some of it could be good, but some of it could be really bad, and it could be a lot of misinformation out there. And it's really, really difficult for athletes, particularly athletes, to be able to know what's good information, what's bad information, and which one do I run with, and how do I apply it, what do I do with it, what's best for me, is this something that I should be listening to and using in my training, is it not something that I should be using and listening to? And that's really why I wanted to start this podcast, was I wanted to be able to share my love of keeping up with science, keeping up with the latest science that's going on in the world of endurance sport and sport performance. Be able to take it, synthesize it, and then not only write about it, which I love doing, but also share it through this podcast so that others, whether you're an athlete or a coach, can be reasonably confident that you're getting good information that's coming from recent science that's been conducted out there. And then I'm also going to help you learn how to apply that science that I'm talking about to your training and racing if you're an athlete yourself, or for the coaches that are listening. You can have confidence knowing that you can take that science that I've kind of read and digested and interpreted for you and then given to you, and then you can take it and apply it to your work with your own athletes as well. So that's really why I wanted to start this podcast. And then the other side of it too is it also helps keep me up to date as a coach and an athlete myself. A big piece of coaching that's often overlooked is continuing education, right? Because science is constantly evolving. And coaching is a blend of both an art and a science. So coaching isn't just an art and it's not just a science, it's a blend of both of those together. And it's the continuing education that helps a coach keep up with the science piece, right? And so it helps me stay up to date with the latest science that's going on in the field. If I know that I'm putting out a podcast, it'll help me, it'll kind of keep me in line and make sure that I'm going out there, I'm reading some of this science on a specific topic, and then I'm going to report in on this podcast to the athletes and coaches that are listening. So it's a great way for me to keep up to date, and that's just going to help me be a better coach and a better athlete myself. So it's kind of a win for me, and then hopefully a win for the listeners of the podcast as well. So my goals for this podcast, our main mission is going to be to bridge the gap between science and application of the latest research related to endurance performance. So it's not only me just sharing science in a way that other people might not be able to understand. My goal is to take the science, take the reading that I've done, the research that I've looked into, read it myself, interpret it, and then dumb it down enough, or simplify it enough is probably a better term. Simplify it enough so that anyone can read and understand it, or in this case, listen and understand it. And then I'm going to teach you guys how to apply it to your training and racing as an athlete, or to your coaching if you're a coach. So it's me kind of basically reporting in on what's out there, what do we know, what do we not know, and then giving you guys take-home messages so that you can take that science, take that latest research, and apply it to your everyday realities. And my goal is to just in general help make athletes and coaches better at what they do. So it's to help give you guys information and the application of that information, to keep you guys a little bit more informed and more on top of what's going on and how things are evolving in the research world as it relates to sport performance and endurance performance. And my goal is to, at least in the beginning, publish one episode on the first of every month. So I have, in addition to the VO2 Max podcast, I have a forum, which is called the VO2 Max Forum. And normally on the first of each month, I publish a science post, which is basically just what I'm doing in podcast form, but in written form. So I go out and read research on a certain topic, write about it, simplify it down so that readers can understand it, and then give some take-home messages about that specific topic that I've researched. And so basically this is going to be running in parallel to the VO2 Max Forum. So for those who like to read it, they can read about it. For those who would rather listen about it or listen to it for 20, 30 minutes, they can listen to it. And then in the future, as things start to evolve and progress, I'm hoping to bring in some experts from the field who might be out there doing some of the research that I'm reading. And I'm hoping that I can get them on the podcast to talk about a specific topic, so that it's not just always me talking about the research that I've been reading into. So those are the goals for the podcast. And then in addition to this podcast, I do have other resources that might be useful for listeners. So I have my website, which is peakenduranceSolutions.com, and I'm going to link all of these things into the description below the podcast or into the show notes. And so I have my website, which is peakenduranceSolutions.com, and on there I have the VO2 Max forum. So the website obviously has all of the coaching services that we provide, but if that's not what you're here for, and you're here just to get information and to take that information and know how to apply it, the resource that you're going to want to go to on the website is the VO2 Max forum. It's for website members only, so you'll just have to sign up for a free site membership, but it's totally free, so there's really no commitment to it other than just signing up to be a member. And then you'll have access to that VO2 Max forum. And so through there, I share the written science posts, and then I also share in there instructional videos once a month too. Whether it's a specific drill or skill or exercise, I provide a video overview of how to perform that skill or drill or exercise, which can be useful for athletes and coaches alike. And then in addition to that, we also have a YouTube channel, which is where all those videos get posted. So there's a library of videos that's constantly growing with swim drills, running specific drills, cycling specific drills, as well as exercises, strength training exercises, plyometric exercises, with videos going over how to do those exercises and what they're working on, what the goal of the exercise is, so on and so forth. So our YouTube channel is also a really good resource for you. And then we have our social media, which is where I'll keep those that follow us up to date with when new podcasts are published, things like that. But also on there, we obviously are sharing some of the things that we're doing as a company and as a coaching company as a whole. So our social media, and it's primarily Facebook and Instagram. Those are also two good resources to follow as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, some of my reasons for wanting to start the podcast, some of the goals for the podcast. And then there's also some additional resources that you might want to follow or subscribe to in addition to this podcast. But hopefully you're as excited about this podcast as I am moving forward. I'm obviously new to podcasting, so I'm sure things will grow and develop pretty quickly in the first few episodes as I start to figure things out and figure out the best way of structuring things and approaching things. But in the meantime, I'm just excited to be able to share my passion of research and the application of that research and science with you guys, the athletes and the coaches that are listening in. So hopefully you guys are willing to subscribe to this podcast channel. If you have anyone else that you know of that would be interested in this, please share it with them. Tell them to subscribe as well. And then be on the lookout for new episodes on the first of each month. Obviously, if you guys have any comments or input or questions, things that you would like to know more about, topics that you're interested in me looking into and then reporting on, there's a lot of different ways you can get in touch. You can message me directly through our website, which I'll, again, link into the show notes below. You can also email me, which our email address is peakenduranceSolutions@outlook.com, and I'll also include that in the show notes below. And then you can obviously shoot us a message through social media as well, whether it's through Facebook or Instagram. So lots of ways to get involved and to give feedback and to give suggestions as to things you'd like to hear about. But yeah, hopefully you're excited. Hopefully you're excited to follow along to the podcast journey that I'm creating moving forward. And I'm just thankful for those of you who are planning on listening in, and I'm excited to get going with this all. So hopefully you guys have a great day, and I'm looking forward to putting out the second episode of this podcast series.